Buenos días, bienvenidos a esta segunda edición del curso de Introducción a la Edición Digital Académica. En esta segunda sesión de la mañana vamos a hablar del procesamiento de XML con bases de datos XML y XQuery, y es un honor para mí presentar al profesor Alexander Zmiel, que viene de Berlín, de la Brandenburg Academy of Science and Humanities. He will speak in English, but Jimena has made the translation of the slide into Spanish. And we will be very pleased to ask questions also in Spanish and in English, and we will make translations. So no problem if we want to write in Spanish or in English, it's okay. Si alguien ha tenido algún problema con la instalación, que nos avise y mientras tanto pues vamos resolviéndolo mientras que él lo explica. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Elena. Now I can hear myself better. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. As Elena announced, I will talk in English and have my slides in Spanish. Thank you very much, Jimena, for helping me translating it. Before I start, I put some materials, some installation instruction for the software we're going to need for the next 2 hours into the platform. Where is it? There. If you could start the download now, if you haven't already installed Java and ExistDB, please start the download now, at least for Java, and install Java. And for ExistDB, we're going to install it together later in an hour or so. You can check if you have Java installed very easily if you open the command line, which is done in Windows by hitting the Windows key and then typing CMD. Then a black window appears that gives you powerful access to your computer. And then you type Java space minus version, and then something like a version announcement of Java should appear. If it starts with 1.8 or 1.7, it's fine. If it's less than 1.7, you should reinstall Java. Okay. If the installation doesn't work at all for you, if you're using Linux or Macintosh, and Macintosh has sometimes problems with Java versions, especially older versions of Mac OS. Don't worry, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have afterwards. And write me an email and I'll try what I can do. Okay, then I'm going to start with my presentation. What we're going to do... Hello. What we're going to do in the next 2 hours is a little more complex, even more complex. It tends more to be programming, software developing. It's processing XML because there must be a reason why we want to do all those XML things. We want to work with these XML things. We want to query it. We want to publish it. So we have to develop some software, which is not as complicated as it sounds. But before we start with the complicated things, I want to show you where it can end. Some digital editions I built that could be an example of what can be done based on XML documents. So I start with the examples, then I give you an instruction into ExistDB. Then we start with a little bit XQuery as just a start. You can go really deep, but this would take 2 weeks alone for itself. And maybe in the end we have the chance to, if it not take too long, to write a very, very, very small web application. So this is where it all starts. This is a typical view on scholarly research material, scholarly sources. This is where you put your research question on. You have manuscripts, you have art, medieval church windows in this case. You can have any kind of objects, archaeological objects. You can have printed books that you re-digitize and build a database on to have a corpus to query on it. So this is where it starts, and this is where you want to end up. This is a selection of all the digital scholarly resources we built in the last 10 years, and not all of them. And this is what we built at the Berlin-Brandenburg Academy of Sciences and Humanities. And what you can see at this slide already is how the design paradigm during the years changed. Not all of the user interfaces, the websites, the databases we built would nowadays be considered as beautiful or usable. So, but we're working on that. Now I want to show you 2 digital editions live, and I would kindly ask you not all of you just attack the website right now, because then our server breaks down. So let me show you the digital edition, and maybe later you can have a look on it yourself. The first one is an edition about medieval charters of Charles IV, who traveled Europe, and now and then he issued a charter for sometimes obviously the place he's the furthest away from. And what we did is we built a website which is based on ExistDB, where you can store all the charters, the XML encoded charters, and you can access and read them. We take this one as an example from our homepage, and you can see at the left you have a navigation of all the charters through the years from 1357 to 1378. You can read the text of a charter. It starts with a little abstract, and then it comes the tenor of the charter with all the special characters that are used, like an O overwritten with an E and things like that. You have access to the XML, which is behind the presentation. This XML is a TEI derivative, which is called CEI, which stands for Charters Encoding Initiative, which is used for medieval charters and was built exactly for medieval charters. So you can use the XML to do your own research directly on the XML base, on the markup. What you can also do, if you like to print it out, the text, you can generate a PDF file on the fly, and then you have a PDF view, print it out, and take it with you to the beach to read it or work on it. Of course, you can search inside the charters. You can enter, if you're looking for example, Magdeburg, which is a city close to Berlin. You also find places that are, you also find writings of the same city which are not in the same spelling as you typed it in, because in the background they are mapped. So if you're looking for Magdeburg, you also find Maidenburgensis, Maidburg, and so on. And if you click on Maidenburgensis, you have in the text also in the different spellings. And what we also did is we put all the charters on a so-called time map. We visualized, and make some more space. We visualized the issuing of the charter, so you can follow the itinerary of the king. And you can see when he was in Prague, he issued a charter, and then you can come from the map directly to the charter text and read it and work with it. Okay, that was the one. The second one I want to show you is a digital edition of manuscripts of the German philosopher Immanuel Kant. And there the specialty or the special feature is that you have a text-image linking. The transcribed text, well, it's very close, small. I can make a bit more space for the view, so now you can see it better. The facsimile is shown directly next to the transcribed text, and what you can do is you can go with your mouse over the text, and then the corresponding part in the facsimile is highlighted. So you know which part of the text is located in the facsimile. This also works vice versa. You can go over the facsimile, and then you scroll, and then you move your mouse, and the text scrolls to the highlighted part. And there you can, also with a double click, zoom into the digitized image, and also move it around and do what you're used to it. You can go closer, zoom in, zoom out, or you can also grab an area, and then this area that you selected, if you're interested in a special word and want to see what was going on here, you can zoom in really close. But this is typical text-image linking digital edition. There is a third one, which is also text-image linking. I just wanted to show you that you can also do it on a word level. You can link not only blocks of text to blocks at the facsimile, but also on a word level or even a character level. This I don't want to show in more detail. If you want to have a look on more digital editions, Patrick Salem put up a collection of a lot of very interesting digital editions. He has a clear definition of what a digital edition is, a digital scholarly edition is, and he collects them now for many, many years. And it's really worth to have a look at them, especially at those which are under the headline recommended. Those collects more state-of-the-art digital editions. The URL where you can find the digital editions you can find in the lower right corner. So what is the digital edition all about? Before you start building a digital edition, before you start marking up texts, your digitized material, you should spend a big amount of time, a reasonable amount of time on planning, building a concept, setting up a workflow, checking what is your peer group, thinking very carefully about what you want to do. This is the most important step, because if you start too quickly, then you have to rebuild most of the things again and again. And when you know what you want to do, you can build a data model. And for the data model, use standards. And if you're working with text, we've learned now that the perfect standards is the Text Encoding Initiative guidelines. But also for other kinds of things you use surrounding a digital edition, like images, use standards, metadata, use metadata standards like Dublin Core or METS. There are so many standards out there. Don't invent anything yourself. Most of the stuff is already existing. The same is true for software tools, architectures, authoring tools, publishing frameworks. There are many things out there. Not all will fit your special needs. Then you have to put some effort into adjusting them to your needs, but there's also no out-of-the-box solution. There's always a bit of adjusting and adapting it to your research questions, to your material, to your sources, to what you want to do with it, but never start from scratch. there is no need to do for it. When you publish your database or software or your text, put it on an open source and on an open access license or an open data license. If it's not under one of the open licenses and it has no license at all, it's not open. A resource in a digital world must have a license. When you build a website, think of your users. Think of your users' view, how they would use it, and build a user-friendly front end. Although we have to deal with lots of complex material, and it's not easy to represent the complexity of a research question. It's not like a Google page. It's much, much more. It goes deeper. It's higher quality. But still think of your users and build them a user-friendly user interface. Also, I think all of you know how painful it can be to have to use a not so well-designed website. Provide at least the standard functionality, which is a full-text search. That gives the user a first approach to your material like they're used by using Google. They just type in a term and then they find this term in the material. Provide some indexes, person index, place names index, and any kind of index that's relevant for your material. And use the possibilities of the internet and the computer. Visualize. You can use, like I've shown you, text link imaging. You can use maps, timelines, networks, graphs, diagrams. There's so many possibilities to visualize information in a way that it's much easier to understand. And when you're finished, take care of it that it's accessible for longer than the runtime of your project. And if you want to be used by your user, or if you want your digital edition to be used by users in a scholarly context or in a scientific context, make it citable. That means you have to have persistent identifier, which always exists forever. Well, forever in the digital world is 5 years or forever, whatever comes first. And the last point is, it's actually always the last point, and there's never time for it. It's documentation. Write down what you've done. Write down what you've meant, what you thought about, that other people can use and build upon your work. So what's the life cycle of a digital edition? That's a bit corresponding to what I just said. You start with analyzing the sources, your documents, your material. This is classic scholarly work. The problem is that most of the things you can see on this slide, you probably can't do all by yourself. So that means a digital scholarly edition always is teamwork. It's not just be done with writing down a text and publish it on a book. It's a bit more effort. You have to design a data model, a document model. That you can do yourself. If you know TI and you decided to take XML, then you can do it yourself, or you can do it together with a data modeling specialist. There are people out there who study data modeling and database technologies. And this is the base for everything. Your data model, you build up the whole digital edition. Also, the choice of the tools is dependent of the data model. If you choose to use a relational data model, you don't use an XML database, then you use a relational database, and vice versa. So those 3 points are the points we're talking about in this week: analyzing, data modeling, and the right tools for it. And if you want to work and collaborate, or you want to publish a website, you need a web server or a server. And you need to install the server, you need to configure the server, and you need to maintain the server, install updates. This all belongs to building a digital scholarly edition. Also the web publication, a pretty interface. You need a web design that you also can do yourself, or you can do it together with a web designer. And then you need a web developer to implement the whole website. This is a different task than designing it. And you have to prepare it for long-term availability and preservation. The one part is storing it away and make it safe forever, and the other one is keep it running as long as possible. And therefore, someone has to be there to take care and to maintain the project, even if it to maintain the digital edition, even if the project ended. In the analog world, you would write a text, print it, give it to the library. And the last 2 points are something which I think is an upcoming job profile, which I call data curator. There will be data curators, maybe also located at the libraries, and they will take care of your digital edition. You hand them your result, and then they take care of the rest. So, what are tools for building a digital edition? As I said, there are many tools, and here you have just a very small collection of my preferred tool set. This is how I build digital edition. This is what I use. And as you can see at one glance, I like to stay in the XML world. I like to work with X technologies because it's a lot of fun. And it works. All those technologies really work very well together. So to model and mark up my sources, I use XML and especially the TI guidelines. I built a subset of the TI guidelines for the needs of my digital edition, and then I model and mark up the text. To generate other formats than XML, I use XPath and XSLT. XPath is crucial. XPath is on the schedule for tomorrow for 4 hours, and it's really, really crucial. If you don't know XPath, you can't work with XML. XPath is the most important thing in the XML world because it's used by XSLT and also by XQuery, which I use to work inside the database, to query, modify, and extract the fragments of XML I want to work with. On the front-end side, I use standard web technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript to build beautiful and informative digital resources, our digital scholarly editions. And most of it I just do with the Oxygen XML editor, but you can use any text editor you like. But Oxygen provides so many convenient features that it makes it really convenient for me to build all the things I want to build, that I stick to Oxygen and to an XML database as a web server to publish the digital edition. You can use any kind of web server, and another system would be using PHP and MySQL and the Apache web server. Completely different kind of data set, tool set, but also possible. So I am using an XML database. Why do I use an XML database? Because when I use XML documents, it's the perfect tool to choose. It's obvious. It's made to treat semi-structured information in a natural way. You don't have to force your semi-structured information, your manuscripts, into a relational database. It's really efficient to work with XML documents. You can analyze them, just choose fragments, you can restructure them, you can do a lot of things with it. And you consider an XML database as a NoSQL database. That is a new buzzword, mainly used for graph databases, but it's also an XML database, is a NoSQL database. An XML database supports validation. So you put in your TI schema and you can validate your marked up documents against this schema. And it tells you if you did something wrong, then it doesn't store it. It gives you a hint where to correct it. And then you can store the correct document. There is an extensive list of so-called native XML databases at this website. There are many open source XML data, not so many, 3, 4 XML databases, open source XML databases. There are some closed source XML databases. There are some really commercial XML databases where you have to pay money for. But I stick to the open source one, to one that is called, I mentioned it before, ExistDB. I work with it for over 10 years now, and it was getting better and better in the last years. There is a growing community, also a growing developers community, and it got more performant, more stable. And yeah, what is it? It is a native XML database. So it's optimized for storing XML documents, complex nested TI documents that we've seen today and yesterday, but it's also able to store other file types, plain text, HTML, the xquery scripts, XSLT scripts, JavaScript, CSS, but also images and sound files. You can store everything inside this database, and then you have it packed at one place, which makes it really convenient to migrate it to a newer version or to update it. It is a web server. That means you start Exist and you have a running web server. You open the browser and then you can access the content in Exist like you can with any web server you know, like the Apache web server. It is an processing engine for XPath, XSLT, xquery, XUpdate, XProc, all the X technologies that need a special processing. And it's open source, so you can use it for free, but you can also contribute. And this is actually what the Berlin-Brandenburg Academy did. We paid the Exist developers to build the versioning component because we needed it, and that is a way to pay back to the open source community. And it is also a web application framework, including development. You cannot just use it for publishing your material, your digital edition, but you can also use it to build it. There's an integrated developing environment, and you can write all the code inside Exist. With Exist, you don't need anything else. You wouldn't actually need the Oxygen XML editor. And many digital editions are really powered by ExistDB. So, the features of ExistDB are it stores XML documents in a very efficient way, that I said. It's a web server, but it's not only a web server. You can embed it in other software as well. You can access it via many different interfaces. REST is the normal interface you use for HTTP access. That is when you access Exist over the web browser. You can access it via WebDAV. That means you can plug it into your system, and it looks like a local drive. So you can use it in your file system. XML RPC stands for XML Remote Procedure Calls. That is when you want programmatical access to Exist. The XML DB API is something similar. You can use SOAP, which is basically that. And the most important thing, even again, it's standing on the end, is that it's very well documented. Very, very good. It has a very good documentation, and it's always up to date, like most of the time. But it's the documentation is crucial, and this really helps. And it has an active community, as I said. And yeah, it comes with this integrated development environment, which is called Excite, what we are going to use later. There you can write all the applications. You can write XQuery, XSRT, XML. You can build whole websites in Excite. It comes with different types of indexes. It comes with the full-text index, which is based on Lucene. Lucene is a different project which was integrated into Exist and made XML aware in a way that you can query very quickly and very performant the content of a huge amount of text, marked up text, which is extremely useful. It has a powerful user and permission management, which is important. And it comes with an application management, a so-called package manager. This is something you all know from your smartphones. This is similar to Google Play or your Apple App Store. You can download an app via the package manager, install it, you get updates, and so it's really convenient to use. It comes with a versioning module, so if you change a document, it will keep a copy of the old document in the database, so you can always go back to all the versions. It comes with monitoring. If you have the feeling that some of your scripts are running not so quick as you expected, you can check what's going on there. It comes with a backup and restore mechanism, which also can be automated, that you say, every night I want to write a backup of my data, and this backup I copy somewhere on another server or an external hard disk, and then it's safe. This is also very useful. And it integrates very nicely with Oxygen. You can connect the Oxygen XML editor to Exist and work directly from Oxygen into the database. But this I won't show today. There is much more to find in the web about Exist. First of all, of course, the ExistDB website, then the documentation. If you have ExistDB locally installed on your machine, this is the URL. You will get the documentation, but you also get the documentation, of course, at the ExistDB website. There is a very good book. It's pretty new. It was published this year. It gives a very good introduction into Exist, and it's also a good reference. I use it a lot. There is a very active mailing list with many emails every day. There also Stack Overflow. You find a lot of answer questions. The Twitter account isn't used that much, just for announcing new versions. And if you want to get direct access or you want to talk to the developers, you can use the IRC channels. And you can even get professional support. If you decide to spend some money on let the Exist developers develop your digital or help you developing a digital scholarly edition, you can contact them and they will do so. So this is the setup we use at home in Berlin. We have the XML database in the center. That is ExistDB, and there everything happens. This is the heart of our whole digital scholarly edition infrastructure. On the right side, you can see the user working with the Oxygen inside Exist. Everything is stored inside Exist. When the user presses the Save button, it is stored directly to ExistDB, and from there, it is automatically the XML documents are automatically generated to be shown on the website, and you can also have a PDF print. That's a so-called hybrid digital edition. You have a PDF that you can print out and the website. Same, all based at the same sources. And this is a little excursus just to make sure that you're not looking for something what you will not find on your hard disk, because exist is not storing an XML document. If you upload an XML document into exist, it deconstructs the whole document. It deconstructs the document into the single components. Everything in the XML world is a node. So you have element nodes, attribute nodes, text nodes, comment nodes, namespace nodes, and so on. And those nodes are stored in different kinds of storage architecture, which I won't go any deeper. That would be too much. But if you want to know about it, there's a chapter in the book which is worth reading. And the storage and indexes exist, deconstructs your XML documents too, are stored in at your file system in a folder that can be found in webinf in your exist installation directory that is called data, the so-called exist data folder. Never touch it, never ever. That's, if you do something with it on the file system level, you destroy the whole database. Only exist should be allowed to write in this folder. So never go there. Okay, now we will install exist together. I hope that everyone now has Java installed. If not, please do so quickly. And now I'm going to install exist. So what I do is I already downloaded it. It's running now at, it's not running. It's here in my download folder. It says exist.db setup 2.2. It's a jar file. It's a Java application file. And I just double click it. And then the installation dialog opens. If it does not work like that, in the exist.db quick start reference, there are some hints what you can do to make it work. It could be that a double click is disabled on jar files for security reasons. Then you have to go to the terminal or the command line and start it with java -jar exist.db installation setup 2.2.jar. This is very good described at the quick start document you find at this link. So this is the installation process, which we start now. It gives you a suggestion of a folder. I would suggest to just take this and install exist.db. Oh, it cannot be written. Then I choose another one. I want to store it. Oh, there it already is. Then I make a new folder. And call it UNED. And there I want to install my exist.db. In step 3, you are asked where to store the data. I would strongly recommend to leave it like that and don't change the data folder to another place. So I leave it like that. Step 4 also is important. There you set the administration password. It is really necessary that you memorize and remind your password. If you forget your password, you have to reinstall everything again. You cannot just click and send me an email link or something like that. You have to start over. So take a password. I now take also admin as password, which is not secure. Don't do this, but it's easy now for just showing it. Oh, the maximum memory and the cache memory can stay like this for now. And also here you can see the packages. You can choose some packages, what you want to install. Also here, please leave all the boxes checked and install everything. And then we go further, and the installation starts in 15 steps. The first 2 steps will take a bit longer. And then we go on. Maybe I can answer some questions in the meantime, if there are questions. I hope there are. No questions, everything clear. That's nice. Okay. For me now the installation is finished. So I am lucky. I have a very quick hard drive. It might take a bit longer at your computers if they're a bit older. Well, I continue. Then click next. And don't quit. Next is important because Exist has to do a bit more after installing. It has to start up the database and install all the applications it has downloaded. And after step 7 is finished, you go to step 8, and you want shortcuts everywhere on your computer. Make a shortcut at the desktop that makes it easier to find it later for starting it. We check the create additional shortcuts on the desktop box. We click next again, and then the installation is finished. We can quit it and go to our desktop. Where's my desktop? There's my desktop, and there is the ExistDB launcher. With a double click on this icon, I can launch it. It should be the same on Linux and on Macintosh computers. If you don't find the icon, what you always can do, you can also do this at the Mac. You can open the Finder, or in Windows, you can hit the Windows key and start typing exist, and then you get a suggestion, and you can open it by hitting enter. And then this little launcher screen should appear. That is the first start of Exist. It will also take a bit longer because Exist is doing some processes in the background for installing, for instance, installing the demo applications. And when this disappeared, you will have a small cross icon, or X icon, not a cross, an X icon in your taskbar. You should allow ExistDB to access the internet, and you can see here the little X. Now it disappeared, now it's there. Exist is a web service. It's running as a service. It's running in the background. It does not open an user interface, a graphical user interface like you're used with Word or with Oxygen XML or your web browser. It just started, runs in the background, and the only indication that it's running is that you have this X either in your taskbar at the bottom, or on Macintosh computers at the top, or on Linux somewhere where you configured your taskbar. So what you can do now, you open your browser, or you can click on the slides. Where do I have it? Here, localhost :8080, and when you click there, ExistDB should appear, and you should see the so-called dashboard of Exist. And the first thing, just to check if you remember your admin password is, you could log in the upper left corner. So you say the username you're going to use now is always admin. If you want to have other users, you can create them to the user manager. But for now it's admin. And then at the password text box, type in your password. As you can see now, at the left upper corner, I'm logged in. So what do you see now there? You see many different things, the so-called Exist application, Exist web apps. The dashboard itself, what you can see here, is also an Exist web app. That's a web app that shows other web apps. For us, not each web app is interesting now, but for instance, better form demo app we don't need now. But the backup you should have a closer look on, not now. The collection browser is nice. When you click on it, it opens a view into the database. In the XML world, on the XML database world, a folder, what you would call a folder on a file system or a directory, is called a collection. And when you open a collection, via double click, there are other collections, other folders, other directories. And when you open the dashboard, for instance, you see files. But in this context, they're not called files, they're called resources. So in the XML world, it looks the same, but it's something different. You have collections and resources and not directories and files. And you have two main collections. The one is the apps collection, where all your web applications go into. And the second one is the system collection, which you never touch. It's the system collection. Don't go there, except for one exception. When you configure an index, we don't do this today, but when you configure an index, it is explained how you do it. You create a collection, a sub-collection in the system collection, and there you are allowed to write. But there also is a user collection, securities, the whole configurations. If you change something there, you can destroy your whole database. So we close the collection browser and see what other apps we have there. We have Excite, that is the integrated developing environment. There we have a closer look on later. We have some demo apps that you can have a look on. We have the Exist documentation. That means your documentation you have always with you, running on your local machine now. You have the Java admin client. That is also a powerful tool that is written completely in Java with a graphical user interface to administrate the database. Some tasks are easier done with the Java admin client than via the web possibilities. You have a Markdown parser. Markdown is a language you use usually in wikis. You have this monitoring and profiling tool. You have the package manager. And the other things, you also have a user manager. You have a big shutdown button. If you click on that, don't do it, then the whole database shuts down, obviously. And it's not accessible over the web browser anymore. And for us now, we use the package manager. We might use the xquery function documentation, the exist.db documentation, and we use Excite. But first, let's start with the package manager and let's see what's going on there. In the package manager, you have a list of all the web apps and applications that you have installed in Exist. At the top, you have a list of all the applications which are installed and need an update. There are several now that need an update at my computer. Please don't do the update. This could take a while. Just we leave it like that. Then we have all the applications you have seen at the dashboard in a list. And then we have, if you scroll down, in a slightly lighter gray, you have all the available web applications that are stored at the central repository, which is hosted by ExistDB, and that you can install via a click of the plus, at the plus icon. You can see you can install a completely wiki system, a complete wiki system via one click, or your own app repository, or cryptographic applications, PDF modules. JFreeShot is a visualization module. There are many things you can do. There's also a very good demo of a digital scholarly edition made in TI, the Shakespeare's Works in TI app. This brings all the works of Shakespeare to you. It's quite big, it's over 3 megabytes, so don't do it now. But you can read them all, and you have them all in different formats. They're stored in TI and they're transformed into HTML, EPUB, PDF, whatever you like. And just to remove this, we go back to the top and look for the better form demo. And as we don't need it now, we uninstall it. You can see the little database icon has a red minus. That means if you click there, you uninstall this web application. This is what I'm going to do now. I'm asked if I really want to do this. I say yes. And it disappeared in the package manager. And it also disappeared if you close the package manager in the dashboard. So this is maybe a good way to get rid of everything that comes pre-installed you don't need. So, but what we need, we want to have our own little web application. So I prepared one for you. I put it at the file storage, and it's called the example app. It's called UNED -0.1.xar. XAR stands for XML Application Repository Package, I think. This is the web application file. Please download it, and then we install it. I already downloaded it. What? And go back to your ExistDB dashboard and go into the package manager again. It's one click. And then you have, at the upper right corner of the package manager, you have this database icon with a blue plus. And when you click on this, a dialog opens that allows you to install locally stored XAR packages, packages that are not coming via the central web application repository, but which are on your computer. So what you can do now is drop a file there, or you go with the mouse on this orange oval thingy, then it turns green. You click it, and then the typical file dialog opens, and there you choose UNED XAR to be installed. So you open it, then Exist is installing it. It looks like this. And then you scroll a bit down and check if it's in the package manager. It's alphabetically ordered, so it makes it easy to find after the shared resources. It should appear UNED examples. And when you close the package manager, there's sometimes an error appears that the dashboard cannot be loaded. That should not be the case. But what you can do now is just reload the page, pressing F5, and then there is your dashboard again, and also the web application we just installed is there. And what we can do now is click on it, and then it opens. And it says, hello, UNED.
This page contains the following error.
That is true. It is an error message because the browser expects XML. And what this application now sends is no XML. So the first thing we should do is change this into XML. But before we can do this, how we can do this is we go back to the dashboard and open the, where is it? The integrated development environment, Excite. Okay, I had it open before. It should, at your computer, look like this now. And on the left side, you have a column where you have an outline of the documents that is shown in the editor. The outline is empty now because the document is empty. And you have this directory tab. And in the directory tab, you can browse your database like you've seen it in Oxygen. Browse the file system. And here you also have the apps collection and the system collection. And the system collection has config, plugins, repro security. Keep it closed. And the apps collection with all the installed apps. And here also is our UNED app. You can, with a click, you can open it. And there you find a few resources in there. Most of the resources are of no interest for the moment because they are just there to tell Exist what to install, where to install it, how to name things, and what to do when someone is accessing these web applications. For us, interesting is now index.xql. Oh, in the XML sub-collections, I put two of Shakespeare plays, Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet, which you can work with. Okay, and what you can do, the index.xql is the one that we are going to use now. And you see here, this is the message which appears in your web browser with the error message that this is no proper XML. This is a valid XQL file. And before we can change this, we should learn more about xquery. So we go back to a little bit of theory and then start coding. So xquery, the XML query language. It's a World Wide Web Consortium, what is it called? Definition? No. I forgot the word. It's a standard. It's a World Wide Web Consortium standard. And you can see it basically as an extension of XPath. It uses XPath and builds a fully Turing-complete developing language around it. That means Turing-complete means that you can use xquery to build any kind of software. If you like, you can build a video game, or World of Warcraft, or a Word text editor with xquery. It wouldn't make much sense, but it would be possible. It is especially designed for the use with XML documents and XML databases, but it has no XML syntax. It comes with its own syntax. It looks more like a classic programming language than XML. Tomorrow you will see XSLT, which is also kind of a programming language, but that uses XML syntax. It takes the data types from the XML schema language, which is also expressed in XML, something like string for text, or integer for numbers, or dates for dates. And yeah, and it's really fun to work with. That is, I really like Xquery. I do it, unfortunately, not often enough. This is a visualization of how those different XML tools, X technologies are related with each other. If you see the Xquery, the big orange circle in the middle takes from or shares with XSLT the XPath language. That's an addressing language, which is the most important thing. I can't repeat it often enough. And with XML schema, which is a schema language similar to RelaxNG or to DTDs, which is a bit more powerful, a lot more powerful. And it shares the concept of data types. This is the string, integer, and date thing. That is a German slide. That is the reason why the type concepts are written Typ-Konzept. So what do we use Xquery for? We use it to address an XML document or parts, so-called fragments of an XML document. You can sort and rearrange those fragments and build completely restructured new XML documents. That is also possible with XSLT. Sometimes it's even better done with XSLT, but it's possible also with Xquery. You can grab fragments from many different XML documents and connect them and build new XML resources. You can calculate with dates, or you can ask questions like, give me all the documents that are, or all the medieval charters that are issued before a certain date. You can do a full text search or a structured search inside the XML documents, and you also can update the XML documents. That means that you can programmatical refresh new entries, new fragments. You can change and modify your XML documents via Xquery. As I said, it's a programming language, so it consists of several components which are common to any kind of programming language. It's literals. When you write a text, you write text. That's a so-called string literals. Literals are marked with quotation marks, and then you have numbers, of course. You can use variables. Variables are indicated by a $sign, and a variable always has a name and a value, so you bind a value to a variable. It has functions that you can define yourself, or you can use built-in functions that are provided by the standard. It has comments, of course, very, very important. Comment your source code, otherwise others won't know what you were intended to do or what the source code is intended to do. It has comparison operators. It has loops and conditionals. If a certain condition is true, then do this. If not, do something else, or check for something else and then do that. It has declarations, where you can tell Xquery, or Okay, everything which starts with TEI colon is belonging to the TI namespace, so treat it in a certain way. And it has exactly 5 crucial terms and expressions which are called the flower expressions, because you can see it on the next slide. They start with the letters F, L, O, W, and R. And this is the heart of Xquery. The expression lets you define a variable. It names a sequence, and it is assigning the whole sequence to a variable. A sequence is it's a sequence of items. It can be literal numbers, XML nodes, everything. It's just saying this variable is this sequence. When I'm referring to this variable, I mean this sequence, and please work on this sequence. For is a loop. It iterates through a sequence. And with for, you have the 2 expressions, where and order by. Where you can ask for conditions. Never use it with existDB. It can be omitted. There's a much more performant way to do it with XPath and with XPath predicates you will see tomorrow. And the second one is order by, where you can order a sequence alphabetically or alphanumerically. And return, if you use if you use either let or for, you have to have a return statement that describes what is giving back the result of this operation. And this is how it looks like in action. This is the Xquery script that takes care for transforming a medieval charter XML into a PDF. The PDF I've shown you, click at the PDF button, then the PDF of the same charter appears. This is all on the Xquery level. There is an XSLT and some XSLFO that does the formatting, but in the interaction with the database, this is everything, not more. So Xquery is also very compact. You don't need to write much code to achieve a lot of things. And if you want to know more about Xquery, there are also some good resources. There are also, additionally to those mentioned on the slide, on YouTube, very good introductory tutorials on how to use Xquery. This wiki book is very good, and the O'Reilly book, of course, as well. And also the Xquery mailing list is very active. So, okay, we go back to our exist now and write a bit Xquery. So what we've seen is that in our browser, when we open our UNED example app, there's an error message that says, hello UNED, but that's not XML. I want to see XML. Although this Excite, we go back to Excite, although this is a valid Xquery document, the browser expects XML. So the first thing we do, we build XML. We surround hello UNED with an XML element, and we call it message. And we close this element, and Excite helps me closing it. I don't have to type everything myself. Then we save it via clicking the Save button. And then we go back to our UNED example app and press F5 for reloading the page. And now we see XML output and no error message. So what we really want to do is we want to interact with our database. So I delete everything and write a little X query, another X query that shows me the complete Hamlet XML document. And for this, we use the xQuery function doc. That's it. And a function always is indicated by an opening and closing bracket. And inside those brackets, those function brackets, you put into quotation marks the path to the document, and the path is db apps UNED XML hamlet.xml, and this is what I write here. db apps UNED XML hamlet XML. This path can be seen as XPath expression. We save this again with the save button. Go back to our web application and reload the page with F5. And now it loads the whole Hamlet from the database into the web browser. And you can see it really is the whole Hamlet. It really is the whole Hamlet. Or maybe we don't want to have the whole Hamlet, we just want to see the title. So what we do, we attach another XPath expression at this expression. And we say, give me the title statement. I'm not sure if I wrote big S, capital S. Is it like that? Yeah. And when we save this, what I highlighted here also is an XPath expression. It just said, give me all the elements with the name title statement which are inside this XML document. I click save, reload this page, and there I have the title statement element, which says everything that's concerning Hamlet. Or maybe I want to only have the title and not the other information. Maybe I'm not interested in the other information. So I can extend my XPath expression and say, give me all the titles, give me all the elements with the name title, which are a direct child of the element title statement, of all the elements title statement, which are inside the document Hamlet XML. We save this, reload it, and then we have only title selected. Maybe we want to see what place we have in our database. So we want to address all the documents that are stored in here. we have to use another expression, which is close to doc. It's called collection. So we use the collection, we change it, doc to collection. And then we have to point inside the function brackets not to the document, but to the collection. That means we can delete Hamlet XML. And this expression now says, the X-query expressions you most of the time read from the end. Give me all the title elements, which are direct child of title statement, of all title statements, which are in the collection db apps UNED XML. So the processor goes until XML, until the XML collection, and uses all the documents which are stored in there to evaluate the rest of the XPath. And we save this, and we reload it with F5, and we get an error again, because, as we all know, an XML document needs a root element. And if we have many titles in a list, we don't have a root element. So what we have to do is surround this with one element. There can only be one root element, and we call it titles. And close, where's that? So now we have a root element, and inside this root elements, the result of this X-query statement goes. We think, oops. But it doesn't. If you do it like that, the statement itself goes there. Because the processor thinks which you put between titles is just string. So what you have to do is, you have to put this, everything what is X-query you put between XML, you have to put in curly brackets. Opening curly bracket, closing curly bracket. Can you see this, or I can make it a big, that might be better. And we save it again. Now my save button disappeared. And if we reloaded it, there you have titles and a list of titles from the collection. And if there would have been more Shakespeare plays or more titles inside the documents, there would be more. Okay. And maybe we don't want to see just the titles, but see what are people saying inside the documents? What are the speakers saying? And if we have a look, at the document, we can we delete this part, and we say, okay, we keep collection, and say, okay, I want to look into this collection, into every document inside this collection, and I want to see every. Let me have a look. Wow. Every speaker which is, or every speech inside the document where, and this is a condition in XPath, you put in How are they called in English? I forgot. Square brackets. Put in square brackets. That means give me back all the speeches, all the elements as P, for which is true what I defined inside the square brackets. And I say it has to be true that inside the speech, which is the point, inside the speech there should be an element L, which stands for line, where the text contains love. So we have to use another function, contains, and this function takes two parameters. The first is the so-called context node. This is the line, and this is the search term. And when we save this, okay, yeah, can wait. Can drink a bit. You have to give me a sign when I'm too quick. I can put all the examples online at the platform afterwards. Okay, shall we check if it works? It works. It gives the speech, and somewhere in here, inside this element, there is a line element where it says love, lovers, for instance. So this is too much. I don't want to see everything like this. I just want to see the line. That makes it easier. A better overview. So I changed SP to L. And in here, I just change it to a point. This expression now says, give me all the element L, which stands for line, for which is true that this element L contains the sequence love. Yeah. I wait.
What does the dot mean? Inside contains?
Pardon?
The dot.
The dot means it's a short writing for self. That means self is this dot is referring to this L. It's like, yeah, it is L. It just means self. It's the only way to write it. So the current context. And the current context is always the one that is chosen before the square brackets. I call it now result.
Dot means father.
No, dot means, yeah, dot means father. Double dot. I changed the surrounding element to result as we're not speaking about titles anymore. Does not work? What is the problem? Should I have a look? That's why I showed it to you. That's a classic beginner's problem. He missed the curly brackets. Okay. Does it work? I'm not sure. Save. And then reload. And then you have all the lines of this collection which are about love. But what the function contains it does not use an index. If you have many documents in there, it will be very, very slow, and it is case sensitive. You will not, when you're looking for love written small, you won't find the big love. That's the love written in capitals. So I don't know if it's in there. Let's check if we use the capital letter L and save. Yeah, but this will not be found by the function contains. So what you can do, you can use another function. You can use the full text index I mentioned before, the Lucene-based full text index, and there you just change contains into FT, which stands for full text, the namespace full text, colon, and then you use from this namespace the function query. And there you can use love, you can use wildcards like the star or the question mark, asterisk or question mark, and when you save this, and you reload the page, we can see if we found the big love. Oh, it's not case sensitive. There. And there it is. So this is a much more powerful way to query your database, to use the full text search index. So we also can count it and surround it in pretty HTML, but I'm not sure. Should we stop or should we go on? Okay. Then the first thing is I want to surround it by pretty HTML. So what we need is an HTML frame structure. This I put at the beginning. Oops. So this is an HTML page now. An HTML page always has a head. And the head always is a title. The title is something. Oh. And an HTML page always comes with a body. That is the text you can see inside, and in the body we will write our list, and I would suggest that I just finish writing it down so that it is a nice looking HTML page later, and then we can check what it says. So what I have to use now is to be a bit more flexible. I want to use the flower expressions. So I want to say, okay, let my search results, I introduced the variable search results, let them be what I find at the collection. And now I get an error message in Excite because I use let, but I don't have a return statement. And I have to have a return statement. And what I want to return is the HTML. So I just put a return there. And this all what's coming after return will be returned. Now an empty HTML fragment will be returned, titled UNED. So I have this variable, and I would put the results in here, but before I want to work with these results, I want to count how many results I have, and I want to pretty them up a bit. So the first thing is I want to count result number. Therefore, we use another xquery function, which is called count, surprisingly, and we put in there what to count, our search results. So we use our variable search results. Search results. And let's check if it worked. Curly brackets. Result number. So this part here, down here is just a proper HTML fragment with xquery inserted into the HTML, and therefore it has to be put between curly brackets. And if I save this now and check, I won't see any results, but the number of results I found. And it's not displayed as HTML because the browser still thinks XML is coming. So I have to tell xquery, via xquery, hey browser, be careful that the result of my xquery script is HTML, render it properly. So this is what I'm going to do next. And therefore I have to put in the xquery script at the first line a so-called serialization declaration. It starts with declare. I do this since 10 years, and I never can remember how this declaration looks like. And I always have to check Google. What is a serialized declaration? Where is it? And it's the same statement since 10 years. Am I stupid? Community, documentation, there is also the complete documentation online, serialize, found nothing. Serialization. That is the statement I need, which I put here. It says declare option, serialize as XHTML, which is HTML, which is also probably XML. When I save this and look at the website again, what? That is new. Oh, please. It always worked. Tja. Save. Okay. Either I am doing something completely stupid or something changed with the new exist version. But I would rather think that I am doing something completely stupid. Let me check. Where is the... Yeah, maybe we can do it like that. I will definitely put it online later. Yeah. Maybe I have done this so many times now.
Yeah. What we could do is you put all the examples in the folder, and tomorrow we can see if it works.
Yeah, it should work. I don't know why it's not working right now.
It's no problem. I mean, it's better that we this afternoon try to practice with this old example and then ask you tomorrow if there are some questions.
Okay.
And now, if you have some questions, bien, si tenéis preguntas, podéis preguntarle. De todas formas, él ha dejado el material en la carpeta, va a poner los ejemplos para que esta tarde podáis cacharrear un poco más tranquilamente. Ajá. Que en el PowerPoint tenéis una serie de ejemplos básicos que podéis probar directamente en el... Hay un enlace con ejemplos básicos que podéis ir probando despacio en vuestro ordenador para ver cómo funciona. Porque, claro, probar los ejemplos según se está siguiendo la la charla es muy complicado, o sea, conviene más ir poco a poco viendo cómo funciona y demás. Entonces os sugiero que si tenéis alguna duda la preguntéis ahora y si no, practiquéis también esta tarde con esto y si no, mañana por la mañana, que él, aunque no esté en la charla, estará todavía aquí, pues aprovechéis para preguntarle. ¿Alguna pregunta?
I was just wondering why does the existing works in the localhost 8080? Well, just
that is just a port that is configured where it's run. You can change the port. You can run it on 80 or on whatever port you like.
Okay.
It's a common port for usually a web server is running on 80, and a Java servlet container or application containers running on 88, and as exist is coming with an Jetty servlet container. That means it's running on 8080. It's just a historical thing.
Ok. ¿Alguna pregunta más? Bien. Entonces, podemos irnos a comer. Nos espera una dura tarde de trabajo, de prueba de todo esto que esta mañana hemos visto, que ya ha dejado de ser bonito, ha empezado a ser absolutamente duro y promete que nos vamos a pegar a fondo con el ordenador, pero bueno, de esto se trataba. I'd like to thank you very much, Professor Alex Miel, for being here, for helping us, and we promise to bombard you with questions because that give us a view of astonishment about what the possibilities are, but now we are like trying to digest all the information you just gave to us. So thank you very much, and we will continue our discussion in the forums and tomorrow.
Okay.